faith is such a part of what we're doing. And anybody who can say that they're agnostic or they don't believe in God, you still have to have faith in order to
Yes.
succeed. Talk a
Yes.
little bit about that on how to develop the faith and take it from the Christian approach. How
Mhm.
do you develop the faith in yourself to succeed in a secular or a business setting?
Yeah.
Hey, welcome to the Networking Star Podcast. I am your host, Jeffery Boyle. Here on Networking Star, I have some of the most innovative, interesting, and just all-around inspiring entrepreneurs and thought leaders. Today, I have one of those thought leaders that I thought was really intriguing as I went through her different posts on social media. I'm joined by Coach Francine Ivey. She is the CEO of Consumed Coaching, and she helps Christian men and women take their skill and passion and turn it into a thriving coaching business. Coach Francine, thanks for joining me.
Thank you for inviting me. I'm so honored to be here.
Well, I like a lot of the people that I have on Networking Star. I met you on Instagram, and typically before we send out the invitation, we always go through it and like to see some of the inspirational things that you put on there. You talk a lot on yours about feeling of worth and being able to live up to your God-given talents. Will you explain a little bit of the genesis of where that started and why it is that you're so passionate about helping people live up to their God-given talents?
Goodness. Yes, that's a big story. Concisely, I grew up as an only child. Great parents, very supportive, and in that process, they let me start everything. I probably almost every type of class you could possibly do, I was a part of. I took karate, I took hula dancing, I took all of it. But unfortunately, they also taught me it was okay to quit. And I found myself quitting everything. And so in that struggle as an adult, I started a lot of things. I'm a visionary. I love seeing big things, but I also found myself quitting a lot of things when they got hard because that was my pattern. And I remember a time in my life, probably about 15 years ago, where I thought to myself, I'm going to quit quitting. I'm tired of quitting. I want to get on the other side of
I'm gonna have
quitting.
to use that one. I like that. I have to quit quitting. So
Yes.
good
Yes.
phrase.
Yes. And I just made the decision. I was going to see what was going to happen if I stuck it out. What was on the other side of quitting? Right. And I was amazed. So I made the decision that I wasn't going to quit anymore. I made myself accountable. I actually was speaking at a regional event and pretty much told everybody I wasn't quitting and this is where I'm going, openly in front of everybody. And I remember a time when I was sitting at my table in the dining room and I was having a rough day. It was one of those days I would have normally quit. And I have learned, but I will say, Jeff, that I have learned to quit in the moment for 15 minutes and then rehire myself. So there are times when you just need to take a break, right? So anyway, I was having one of those really hard, bad days, and my husband walked through and he knew that I'd made that decision. And he said, I said, I quit. I'm so tired of this. Like, this is just too hard. And he said to me, you want to rank up, don't you? You want to reach this point, don't you? And I was like, well, yeah, that's my goal. And he was like, okay, then today you have to act like that goal. You have to act like that rank. And I wanted to throw something at him, but everything around me was too expensive to throw at him at the time. But he was right. He was right. And that was the antithesis. When I hit those ranks, I hit those places faster than most people had hit them before. And realizing, man, on the other side of quitting is some really fun stuff. And I think I realized in that moment that you're worth a whole lot more than you're given.
You know, as I was going through that, and even as I was listening to your story of quitting, it reminds me of the parable of the talents.
Yes.
And the parable of the talents right? That you've got one servant that took his 5 talents and just made, doubled those. Same thing with the person with 3 talents, but the servant that had the 1 talent hid his talent in the ground. And of course, talents were a form of money, but I love that they're defined as talents. So that's kind of what I was thinking about. And that 1 talent was taken from the slothful servant and given to the faithful servant. It really makes you wonder. You're right. It is a pandemic of quitting out
Yes.
there, and I think that part of that is taught, and part of it's just that I think it's too that the society has just told people it's okay to quit.
Mhm.
Explain a little bit about how you are teaching people from based upon your experience how to really toughen up, quit
Mhm.
being quit being a wimp, I guess, and get past the pity party and move on to something more productive.
Yeah. I think one of my main, and it was funny, I was listening to your release from 3 days ago, and they were, your guest was talking about it too, was taking action, right?
Yeah.
Learning that when your mind wants to drop down into that spiral of, I don't know how, I don't know what, I'm not good enough, I'm not, that the only way to really break out of that is to take action, right?
Mhm.
We learn moving forward. And most of my clients will tell you that the thing that I say the most is take scary, messy action.
Mhm.
I tell God all the time, please make it bigger than I can handle and keep me out of the way, and we'll do fine, right? Because I know if I get my hands all over it and I get all fearful and all those things, it'll stop really fast. So um I and in that, it has played a big role in several places where normally everybody else would stop, and I chose not to. I chose to actually step up, because I know that there's healing on the other side of that. There's I believe in the thing. I have a friend of mine who had an alligator in a tank, and his dad decided to remove the alligator and clean the tank. What he didn't know is he put it in a larger tank, and when he did, by the time he put the alligator a few days later back in the tank after he got it cleaned, the alligator had grown to the bigger tank,
Yeah.
right? And many times we stay in these little small tanks because we're too fearful to get into the bigger tank. And what we don't realize is that we're staying small with small thinking and small ways of doing things. If we would just overcome the fear and step into that bigger tank, we'll grow to that tank too. We'll grow to
You,
that tank too.
your approach, in our lifetimes, for example, after 9/11, 90% of the United States was together. They took all these polls, and prayer was
Yeah,
not in any way politically incorrect. There was
right.
nation time, prayer throughout the nation. You look at it, that is really in historical numbers yesterday when that happened, that
Mhm.
terrible event of 9/11. Whereas anymore, for example, the way that you posted as a Christian coach, you essentially are now politically incorrect for having made that shift. To me, it's dazzling how fast politically correct and politically incorrect come in and out of fashion. Explain to me why it is that you are taking that chance. And
Mhm.
I'm a person of faith also,
Yes.
but you have taken that chance of saying that you are a Christian coach. Why is that so important to you?
Well, it's funny. For number one, I came out of 27 years of ministry. Like, it's non-negotiable. I got saved late in life. And so I know what it's like to kind of play to the world. And I know that there's not a lot there. Like, it is, yeah. I got tired of giving the enemy airtime. And so when I got saved, I got radically saved. Stepped right into ministry, married my husband soon after that. We were in full time ministry, then became a coach, and was a corporate coach for a long time. And then God said, and I felt uncomfortable because I went from ministry and a corporate sales team to coaching sales, and then feeling uncomfortable again, going, I don't know what's uncomfortable. I don't know what to do here. And God just literally in a Bible study said, "What's your non-negotiable?" And I said, it's you. You're non-negotiable to me. And he says, "Okay, step out and start your own company." And 2 years ago, March of 2021, I did that. And so part of our value, creed, and mission is we are unapologetically a Christian coaching company. And we will serve anyone. You don't have to be a Christian to be a client, but you understand the underlying thing here is that we're biblically based and we're spirit-led coaches. And that's what you're going to get in that coaching call. And for the most part, no matter who someone is or where they stand, surprisingly enough, people just don't have a problem with it because we're upfront with it.
I had a class at college. It was called Religions of the World.
Mhm.
And I'm now 51. Hard to believe that I'm 51. So that would have
I
been
feel you.
like 30 years ago that I had this class. I loved the class
Yes.
because not only did it expose me to other Christian religions, but exposed me to Zoroastrianism, Buddhism, Islam,
Mhm.
and I loved it. And anymore, I think what we're seeing with this divergence away from believing in God as almost being in vogue, as being popular. I saw even 30 years ago just how great it was to meet with to meet with in with some Islamic people of Islamic faith.
Amen.
I couldn't find any Zoroastrians in around where I was at, but anymore to be able to affiliate with somebody who has faith is really a tremendous pick me up. So I was curious to understand how it is that when you bring somebody on board, how do you explain that to them? I know it's really right a part of what you're saying right when they come in, but do you have people of other faiths that come in, and how is it that you mix that coaching with biblical terms?
Yeah. Yes. I mean, we have people who would say that. I mean, I think we have every level. We have people who are devout and, and then we have some that are, I mean, they go to church. And then you have some people that absolutely are not. In the very beginning on my call one, I will say, tell me your story, right? Tell me who you are, what's important to you. Tell me what your 3 goals for our coaching time would be. And they will tell me their story and I will relate and connect. And then I tell my story. And part of my story is I live in the DFW area. I have 3 amazing kids. My faith is extremely important to me. And you'll see that. And out of that faith will come a real positivity. And not only am I faith based, but I'm also obnoxiously positive. So if that doesn't resonate with you, we need to know that now, is usually what I tell my clients. And I'll be your biggest cheerleader. I'll stand on the on the sideline with the clipboard and cheer you on. And while you literally do all the work, I'll just be there to make sure to spot the things that are slowing you down. So that's normally how it's introduced in the beginning. Of course, it's all over our website. It's all over our social media. So they kind of know coming in.
So it really isn't a
Um,
surprise, is what you're saying, is by the time that they get there, they understand. And I would
mhm,
guess that you would still attract a lot of people that would probably have a similar background, but
mhm.
perhaps they've had a crisis of faith. Perhaps they, even as you said, a
Yes,
crisis of, it's not just a lack of belief in God, but perhaps a lack of belief in themselves in the process.
absolutely. Absolutely. So yeah, because the coaching actually came out of a crisis and a trauma for me. And so a lot of times that's what people resonate with is my story and how I got up off the ground when other people would have totally excused me if I
Mhm.
wanted to just throw the covers over my head and just stop. So
And I think a lot of people anymore right now are throwing the covers over their head, are hiding from the world.
mhm.
And one of the things that you just said was obnoxiously positive. And I think that one of the biggest damages that occurred during the pandemic was shoving people in their homes, not letting them come out, giving them
Oh,
free money, making sure that they had fast internet. So all they had to do during the day was get cranky. All they had to do was have a
mhm,
crisis of faith. And I think that one of the, we know that attendance at church has suffered since then. And there's
mhm,
a lot of attempts to be able to bring people back. But it seems to me that there is a huge crisis of faith. There's a huge crisis of optimism, as you were talking about it.
Mhm.
What does that just obnoxiously optimistic, how does that rub either in a good way or a negative way for the people who you work with?
Yeah. I think that probably the criticism would be, I would say somebody at one point said, I don't need a cheerleader. I need someone to tell me what to do. And I was like, no, you need both. You need
Yeah.
someone that's going to correct you, and I will do it. Like I am up front, and I don't candy coat things as a coach, but at the same time, we need to learn to celebrate. One of the main things that I tell my clients is if you don't learn to celebrate, when you accomplish something and you just go on to that next thing, you don't get, let's just talk physiology for a minute. You don't get that shot of dopamine that you need to be motivational later for you. I mean, we know our bodies work that way. We're seeing more and more of it. That's the reason why the depression and the anxiety and the discomfort with communication, which is, I think, part of what the enemy wants is for us not to have, like we're doing right here, a real conversation. When many of the big explosive things happened in our culture, I reached out to some of the people that might have been on the other side of that culture and said, I want to have a conversation, and I want us to be open, and I want us to really listen to each other, because I think that's part of the problem is we're not really listening. And I think that's why people who may not have the same faith as me, or maybe they're not as positive, or even have that kind of positive feel, they may tend toward the negative. They're willing to have that conversation because I really listen, and I'm asking them to really listen to me and look
People aren't
beyond what they
listening
think.
anymore. And I love that you said that you're listening to them. It is a lost talent, and
It
it
is.
has to be something that has to be taught as a part of what we're doing. As a result of it, my brother and I, we both went to law school. We had a lot of the same professors, even though that he went at different times that I did. And one of the things that we saw when we were there was we saw liberals and then conservatives. It was almost split right down the class at the law school that we attended. And the first year we rubbed each other raw. Everybody, the liberals and the conservatives rubbed each other raw. But then you start to like each other. Then you start to realize that, hey, you're divergent from me, but you've got some really good ideas. And though we're going to have to agree to disagree on certain things, fact
Yes,
is we really started to respect each other once we got over ourselves and started to listen just a little bit. And I think that
absolutely.
that was the best gift that I got from law school, is understanding that. How do you teach that? How do you help people to be able to, when they have such polar opposites? We have now everything from you name it. I mean, it's even compared to when I went to law school a little while
Mhm.
ago, it is far more contentious now. How do we start to get people to, one, regain the faith in themselves, and two, quit being so cranky, and three, how do we start to talk again?
Yeah. I mean, teaching people to listen, I think, well, number one, it's part of my coaching certification, right? If you cannot attentively listen, you're probably not a coach, right?
Yeah,
But from the logistical of, I have to tell some of my coaches to put a sticky note on their computer as they're talking to their clients that says, shut up. Right.
yeah,
I'm not there to tell them what to do. I'm here to listen. And most of the time, you're right. It's an art that most people, that's missing in the world. So for a coach, how powerful a skill to have that people need.
yeah,
And I think I hate to say this, but it is just do it and really listen, not listen to combat, but really listen. I even teach people when they're dealing with maybe someone objecting the direction that they need to go in, is to not combatively answer everything they're objecting, but actually say, okay, I'm hearing you. I hear this is what you're having a problem with doing this action item or moving forward in this direction. Is there anything else that you're struggling with? And
yeah,
then you repeat those two things. And before you combat it, you say, is there anything else? Right? Because it is a lot easier to deal with all the objections at one time than to begin the sword fight that goes on if you're dealing with, hey, I'll prove you wrong on this, and then I'll prove you wrong on that, and then I'll
yeah.
prove. Most people, when they're struggling, the first thing they want to know is that they're heard,
Yeah.
right?
Well, and I like what you're saying with that, because, you talk about a sword fight. They're not listening. They're thinking of their next thing that they're going to do to attack you
Absolutely.
with. I'm just finishing a book right now. It is spectacular. It's written by a former FBI negotiator, and he focused on hostage negotiation. Talk about the most difficult thing in the world to
Wow.
do. And he said the number one thing that you have to do in negotiating with business is control yourself. Just
Hmm.
control yourself. And if
Yes.
you are prone to anger, you're in real trouble. And
Hmm.
I love what he said. Is he said that the person doing the talking is not in control.
Right.
The key is to be able to ask probing questions, to mirror the person, to be able to truly understand by giving that back to them in your own words,
Hmm.
and then listening. And every time they say it, to be able to, even he said, it's so tough. You've got killers, you've got rapists, you've got the worst of the worst who have taken people hostage. And you have to show them some empathy, that
Hmm.
you're understanding them. If not, you might as well just go in with guns a-blazing, and just everybody gets hurt in the process. So
Wow.
as
Wow.
you're explaining that, that's it's not that I'm thinking of guns a-blazing, but your knife fight really, I guess your sword fight really exemplified that. Explain
Hmm.
just a little bit more of really, I'm going back to the faith part of it, that
Hmm.
uh, faith is such a part of what we're doing. And anybody who can say that they're agnostic or they don't believe in God, you still have to have faith in order to
Yes.
succeed. Talk a
Yes.
little bit about that, on how to develop the faith, and take it from the Christian approach. How
Hmm.
do you develop the faith in yourself to succeed in a secular or a business setting?
Yeah. Again, it's one of those things of being willing to take action at the level, sit in that. And when we talked a minute about being positive and celebrating your successes, and then
Yeah.
taking the next action and taking the next action, bravery. And realizing that courage is not the lack of fear, it's just action in the face of
Mm,
fear,
that's a good
right?
point. Yeah.
And I'll change a little bit of verbiage there. Because of my faith as a Christian, my faith is not in me. My faith is that God will show up. That Romans 8:28 is true, that he works all things out to my good. So even if I fail, even if something I do in my business doesn't work out the way I want it to, then it's part of the process. I really truly believe that failure is just a part of success. It's not the opposite. It's not an antithesis of or what's the word I'm looking for? An antonym of success. Like, it's not the opposite. It's actually the stepping stones to success. If you think about when you teach a child to ride a bicycle, you expect them to fall down a couple times before you get started. I went to learn how to snow ski, and the first thing they taught me was how to fall and how to get up. That's not really what I wanted to do when snow skiing, but they knew that it would be a part of the process. And the quicker I learned how to get up on those skis again, the quicker that I would become less and less likely to fall. And so I think sometimes in business or in life, we forget to tell people that failing is part of the process. It's not a failure. It doesn't mean you're not made for this.
Yeah.
And I think that's what we believe.
And I think that will contribute a lot to what you brought up briefly before, with anxiety.
Hmm.
We talk about a crisis of faith, but we also have a crisis of anxiety.
Hmm.
And I think that comes a lot down to people are just afraid to fail, and giving them permission to fail. Explain to me a little bit about how you deal with anxiety, because we all have it. Even the
Yes.
bravest of the brave has got a moment of shaking in the boots. Explain how you help people overcome anxiety as they're trying
Mhm.
to take on newer and bigger tasks.
Yeah, I think with me, and I spent about, I would say, about 20 years, and my mother dealt with severe anxiety to the point of being hospitalized.
Wow.
I also dealt with some, just thoughts that were as real to me as possible, but when spoken out loud made no sense. But they're real when you have that anxiety. I combat it with the Word of God. I combat it with truth. I'm I told you I'm a little bit obnoxious, and my, I have an unapologetic kind of personality. So, I mean, I took scripture, and I remember one night I was struggling, just really struggling with some thoughts, and I thought I'm just not high enough. So it was the middle of the night. I stood up on the couch and I started proclaiming some scriptures over my life that, that God doesn't give me a spirit of fear, but of love, power, and a sound mind. And so that's one degree where I will take it. The other area is recognizing that a failure or what might happen or how other people feel about me, which is normally where I might struggle, how I'm perceived. Um, it doesn't, I can't control what they think. I can't control. So recognizing truths, then I go back to taking every thought captive. I eventually learned to catch the signs early, by taking every thought captive, realizing that my thoughts are not me, that I can take them captive. If they don't line up with the word of God for me, that I can take them captive and say, that doesn't line up. What is the truth about that? I just taught a whole masterclass on imposter syndrome, the things that we feel when we feel like an imposter. So I take all of these scriptures, and then I'm purposeful and intentional with my thoughts. In the mornings, I have a certain routine of thinking of three major things that I'm so grateful for in my life, anchoring to some thoughts of real successes that I've had in my life. And I anchor to those. And then I anchor to the truth of the word of God, which I know has power.
I don't know if you've seen this show. It's on Netflix. There's a lot of trash on Netflix, but they have come out with one that I thought was super. It had Kelsey Grammer in it, and it had
Wow.
the gentleman that plays Jesus from The Chosen, and I think it's called The Jesus Revolution. Have you seen that?
Wow. No, I have not.
Oh God,
I think I've
you
seen
gotta
some
watch it.
previews of
It
it.
was really, really wonderful, and I think one because I think that actor is that plays Jesus from The Chosen is spectacular, and I think
Yes.
that we've seen recently because of Angel Studios and what they've done with The Sound of Freedom as well as with The Chosen.
Hmm.
We watched The Chosen episode last night with my family, and you just walk away with just a true understanding and a true just appreciation for the difficulties that the people had that
Yes.
surrounded Jesus during that time. The human,
Yes.
a lot of times you'll read it in the Bible and you really don't see the personalities. And even though I know they've taken some liberties of what could have happened,
Mhm.
it's really wonderful. And there has been talk of how in the world that this Angel Studios was able to take this show on The Sound of Freedom with Jim Caviezel and turn it into such a phenomenon. It was beating Indiana Jones when it came out. And I think it had
Yeah.
times that it was even beating Mission Impossible. But
Mm.
there's this hunger right now for positivity. There's this hunger for that. And what that show did on Netflix, I'm pretty sure it's called Jesus. People can correct me in there, the Jesus Revolution or something like that. It showed about how in the 70s, you took a preacher who's really his congregation was dying, and he
Hmm.
brought in some hippies, and the hippies had a strong faith in Christ, and it just blew up. And it
Mm.
still is one of the most prolific churches in all of California, based upon this group of hippies that really found faith. What needs to happen, do you think? And by the way, just this profound success that Angel Studios has had has come has come from multiple faiths within Christianity. It is
Yes.
not just a single faith, but you are finding so many people coming together to be able to really just say this is something that we really love. And that's, I think, to me, was powerful. How do we as a group of people, as just people of faith, not
Mhm.
people from just Christianity and not just faiths within Christianity, how do we as people of faith that believe in God, everything from Judaism to Islam to Christianity, how do we then come together on this topic of faith and unity?
Oh, wow, that's such a good question. So I have three children. One is 27, so she's in the millennial range. I've got
Yeah.
a 22-year-old who's a Gen Z, and then I've got a 17-year-old young man who is a young Gen Z. and extremely smart, loves the Word of God, like almost carries it around more than, well, he does. He carries his Bible around more than his phone. Powerhouse, and he does the same thing. He listens, right? He's willing to have hard conversations. It's one of the things that I've taught my kids. I notice a lot of parents will almost they'll be fearful of strong conversations. My son is surrounded by kids struggling with everything from identity to, lots of different sins in their life. And he is willing to sit and have those conversations in their right timing and really listen to them. So, if we're going to really make a difference, we're going to have to get real. We're going to have to get real. In 2017, my January 8th, my whole life fell apart because my husband had a car accident that took his life. And in a matter of moments, a Sunday morning that was perfect ended up in tragedy for us. And I remember thinking, as I hit the floor that night, everybody was in my house, everybody was taking care of the kids. I remember hitting the floor and thinking, telling God, this is not the way I wrote my story. That, we've served you. This is not fair. This is not okay. Right. And tears streaming, hitting the carpet. But I remember saying to him, but if you'll take it and you'll use it for your glory, you'll show me some way that none of this is to waste, I'll say yes. And it was my first yes. And that following Thursday after the funeral, God called me to get on a live Facebook video. And he said, I need you to go out there. And of course I argued with him at first. He says, no, I need you to go out there. And it was messy, tears, ugly, cry, the whole bit. But I was real. And what I did was I said, this is where we're at. This is where we're broken. This is how God's meeting us. And this is how he's healing us. And I figured we'd be done. 50 of my friends would watch this video and we would be done. I wasn't a big star or anything. So, what would a video do? Before midnight that night, 35,000 people had seen the video. I was getting comments like crazy. Why? Because it was real and it was raw. And for 3.5 years, I went live Monday through Friday every morning. And I just walked people through my grief. Where was God when things weren't fair? Where was God when bad things were happening to good people? If we keep pretending like we never go through anything, if we keep pretending like we have these set answers, the world can see through that. My Gen Z, my young man, he can see through that stuff. And the reason why his friends respond to him and get set free of stuff and walk in freedom, and he got to baptize his first friend at church, he's 17, is because he really listens and he lets them, and he plants truth when it's time. And they get set free because they can hear the truth and they can hear that he genuinely loves them. The Bible's pretty clear in First Corinthians or 2 Corinthians? 1 Corinthians 13. Without love, we're a sounding cymbal. Not the love the world's trying to say where we accept everything, but a real love, one that loves enough to say, hey, I'm here. I'll love you through your sin and I'll love you out of your sin. And I think we have to be genuine. And I remember looking at the camera and saying, this is what I know. My feelings aren't dictating the truth. My feelings are real feelings. But I know God's good, even though right now he doesn't feel good. And I know that he's able, even though he said no to my prayer. And I know he loves me, even though I don't feel it right now. Because my feelings aren't dictating the truth in my life. The truth dictates, the feelings will follow.
Good stuff, Francine. Tell everybody where to find you.
Consumedcoaching.com is our coaching team. And of course, I love connecting with people on Instagram. So if you're on Instagram, find me at Francine _Ivey, Ivey.
Well, thank you so much for being a part of Networking Star.
Thank you.